We just had an entertaining week 1 of the NFL season, some big hits, some monster breakouts, and of course, some injuries. Join Kyle Bellefeuil from Footballguys and I as we discuss some of the IDP players rising up our boards, some players we're pumping the brakes on just a bit, and some players that we just can't figure out as we head into week 2 of the NFL season. If that sounds like something that you and your team need, sit back, listen in, and let's get after it on this edition of the IDP After Show.
This is the IDP After Show.
Welcome back to football. What an interesting week 1 it was. I'm so glad to have football back. I love to have this opportunity to share this time talking with you about the game we love, IDP Fantasy Football. You're in for a real treat for this episode. I get to share some space with the biggest Packer fan in the UP, a writer for some wonderful articles over at Footballguys, and the OnlyFans model of the month for January of 2023, Mr. Kyle Bellefeuil. Kyle, my friend, how have you been?
I've been great, man. Thanks for that OnlyFans 2023 show. That was a big month for me. I'm really excited that you knew about it. So
I find that you had to change your screen name a little. I was kind of hoping you just, but hey, I get it.
There's been moving parts since.
Yeah. I get it.
Can only fly so close to the sun,
Look, it happened to Icarus, right?
Yep. No, man, things have been great, and I'm excited. Thanks for having me on, dude. It's always a great time.
Oh, pleasure is mine, sir. We got to get this elephant out of the room right away, Kyle. How excited and pumped are you for the Packers this season?
Oh, dude, week 1, you couldn't ask for anything better, right? The defense looked awesome up front all the way through. Like we were talking about before the show, the pass rush. Obviously Micah Parsons is going to help things out, but just in general, like the interior, everybody looked good. We're good against the run. Edgerrin Cooper is just an animal. Quay Walker's, he played well. I mean, that was fun to watch. And the offensive line, I mean, gave Jordan Love all the time in the world. And to beat the Lions like that, I had high hopes, but I didn't expect that. So I don't know about you.
100% agree. And we didn't even have Nate Hobbs,
right,
so
yeah,
when we get him back, like, oh my gosh, like the Jeff Hafley defense, like he just must be salivating, like just thinking about all these tools and toys that he gets to play with each week.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to be fun. So get to watch him. I got the Commanders on Thursday night. So hopefully the short week doesn't have any hiccups for them. So
talking about the Commanders, we've always had a problem with running quarterbacks, and Jaden Daniels can do it both. So I'm intrigued. We're talking about that today at work, a few of my buddies, and it'll be a true test because he's a handful. So
yes,
but I'm excited. Can't wait.
It'd be a fun fantasy night, regardless.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of fantasy, in this episode, like we did last week with the great Jake Colhagen, we're going to skip the game breakdown and instead jump right into the players that we like most than consensus. We're going to talk about some of the players that we're going to maybe pause on a little bit, and then a couple of players that we just don't know what to do with heading into week 2. So, Kyle, with all that said, who's a defensive lineman that you have firing you up this week in week 2?
Yeah, I'm going with an old veteran here, Haason Reddick from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Week 1, Reddick showed he still has some juice left in the tank with his new team. He played a really hefty snap load, I thought, with 60 snaps, 79% in week 1. 3 tackles, tackle for loss, a sack, and a quarterback hit. So just a nice day for the old vet Reddick, who, I was hoping to change of scenery after what happened with him not being around and, all the things that happened in New York, but just to see what he could do here. And it was excellent. He posted some nice pass rush metrics per Pro Football Focus. He had 8 pressures on the day, a 73.2 pass rush grade. So hit the stat column. His metrics look solid. I love that. He has a nice week 2 matchup against a weak Houston offensive line that got beat up by the Rams last week. The Rams have a good front. Obviously, they give a lot of people problems, but the Houston line gave up 3 sacks on C.J. Stroud last week. So I like the matchup there. He looked good in the season opener, and I like his chances to keep it rolling week 2 under the lights on Monday night.
Yeah, we get 2 games this Monday night.
Yeah.
So we get a twin bill this week. So that's
good.
I love Reddick, and for a lot of the same reasons that you had mentioned too, just because he's finally, got the stigma of last season behind him. Yep. He feels, I think, motivated to play. He's got something to prove, a little bit of that chip on his shoulder. And like you said, he's got a really nice matchup heading into week 2. So yeah, definitely fire him up. Do you have him as a DL1 this week?
Probably more of a 2, I guess.
Okay.
I guess I wouldn't hate it if if he was my top option.
Yep.
Yeah, probably more of like the high end two flirting with it, but just I love what we saw week 1, but it depends what your options are. I don't hate it, but I love the matchup, and like we were saying, he looked great week 1 and checked all the boxes. So I wouldn't hate it if he was your top guy. So.
And chances are, if he is your DL1, you probably are stacked at other positions because you may be weighted on the position, and then you're like loaded somewhere else, and then you were playing upside or maybe streaming the position, and there just happens to be a great article over at the IDPshow.com website, that streaming article for defensive linemen. Scott does a great job with that, so
check he that does. Out. And that's a great point, right? That is an excellent point. Like if he is looking like your top edge rusher, depending on what your group look like, you probably loaded up at LB. Maybe you went early on, Brian Branch or Derwin or whatever at DB as well instead of going edge. That's a great point. So I would love that, right? If you're loaded at LB and at top DB and you play the matchup stream with these guys.
Yeah. All right. My defensive lineman that I really like more of the consensus this week is a player by the name of Isaiah McGuire. I think he's quickly kind of emerging as a sneaky good IDP play, not only in week 2, but maybe in season-long leagues. And surprisingly, he's only rostered in 5% of sleeper leagues right now, which seems extremely low for a player that played extremely well in week 1. I really like him for a strong week 2. If we look back at week 1 performance, he racked up 6 total tackles. He had a sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 QB hits, and he did all of this on 29 snaps. And so the Browns only played 52 snaps on defense, so he was seeing well over 50% of snaps, which probably might increase as he did so well in week 1. He's probably going to get a little more of an opportunity to shine, to show what he's capable of doing. Kind of speaking of opportunity, McGuire, he continues to outsnap everyone else on the team minus Myles Garrett, which signals that he's probably really favored by the coaching staff, and playing opposite of Myles Garrett definitely makes your job a lot easier. I don't know if you saw that clip of Garrett like coming around up the middle, like rushing from that like quarterback cam or whatever, but like, no, thank you. Like that does not sound like a good day having that man coming at me like he can. So if your league rewards tackles for losses, sacks, QB hits, McGuire's week 1 efficiency makes him a strong plug and play candidate. I have McGuire no less than a DL3 this week. He finished as the DL16 last week. So if he can push for 60 or 65% of snaps in week 2, we could be looking at a real breakout candidate this season. And so do your team a favor. Think about adding him in a league just to see if he is this year's Andrew Van Ginkel, if he can have that type of breakout season. So.
Yeah, I love that call, right? he looked good, and like you said, he probably earned a little more run too. And it never hurts when you're playing across from a guy like Myles Garrett. It's kind of like, doing this show with you, I was not too worried about getting my beard looking the best and wearing the best shirt. I knew you'd carry the looks for the show all night, so I just had to be here. So you know what I mean? You
are the guy with the OnlyFans, of the month. I mean, I can't even say that, so. It wasn't 2023. It was a couple years ago, but
yeah,
I mean, you're like a fine wine, Kyle. You just kind of only get better with age. So
that was my glow up year, but I'm doing all right.
Nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of nailing it, who's a linebacker that you like this week?
My linebacker I like this week is Mr. Bobby Okereke from the New York Giants. Heading into the year, there was some uncertainty surrounding Okereke having his usual full-time role. There was some weirdness in the preseason with the rotation between him, Micah McFadden, Darius Mossau. They mixed and matched the combination together. They passed around the green dot. The Athletic beat writer, Dan Dugan, hopefully I got that right. But he put out in his roster projection article, he threw out a line that Okereke might not have his usual full-time workload. There might be a continued rotation. So that was another little, red flag, if you will. So it felt a little uneasy heading into week 1 that he would have his usual, full-time green dot role that we look for. But in week 1, he ended up playing 68 of the 70 defensive snaps. He racked up 16 tackles, a really nice day. However, Micah McFadden did go down early in the game with an ankle injury, so we didn't really get to see if they were going to roll with this rotation. So didn't really get sorted out, but unfortunately, McFadden got hurt. And I don't know did you happen to see a concrete timeline on anything?
It sounded like it was a high ankle one. So it's looking like 3 to 4 weeks is what the early projections were like. And
Okay.
we know how those ankle injuries kind of linger. So,
right. Yeah. That's kind of what I saw too. I saw possible surgery, which would, like even extend it. So with McFadden out for a probably extended period, it leaves less doubt around Okereke's role in competition for tackles. And we saw him pile them up this week. Pomazal probably gets a bump, but Okereke will, looks like the dude, right? Like he was this week, and he doesn't have McFadden pushing him. The Giants' offense looked bad in week 1, like real bad. So that led to the defense playing 70 snaps against Washington. Lots of opportunities to make plays when you're out there a bunch. They take on division foe Dallas in week 2. I thought their offense looked pretty competent to sustain drives against a tough Philly team week 1. So I think it could be another week with plenty of opportunities for Okereke. Doesn't have McFadden in that 3-man rotation we might have saw. We still don't know, right? But, that's his biggest threat, for tackles and possibly, bleeding into his lead role. But so I think Okereke is set up for another big week just because he's going to be out there and falling into tackles. Because I think the defense is going to play a bunch of snaps again.
Yeah. This is one of those situations where like the best kind of ability might be availability.
Right.
And, it's like kind of a battle of attrition. And here we are already in week 2 talking about, not really the last man standing kind of mentality, but like here we are, Okereke has that opportunity. Not only that, but thinking about that defensive line that plays in front of him, like they're going to draw so much attention. You got Sexy Dexy in the middle, like taking on double, triple teams. You've got that trio of like studs on the outside between, Burns, who had an amazing week 1. You got Thibodeau, who I don't know if they know what they're going to do with him yet.
Right.
But then you got Abdul Carter, who had a great week 1 on very limited snaps. So all of a sudden that defensive line is drawing a lot of attention. And whoever the linebacker is for New York is going to be super clean, like he's going to have free run to do what he needs to do, whether it's making tackles, blitzing, that's just such an advantage for a linebacker to have. So love that call.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, totally agree. The fact that up front, right, they should keep him clean and let him just fall into tackles.
We love guys falling into tackles.
Yes. Yep.
So I probably am going to get a little pushback on this one just because all offseason, this guy has just gotten hate and not a lot of love just because he's been one of those players that the vet that's been passed around and hasn't been very good. But Devin White, it's gross, it's ugly. But what happens if this Devin White is the Devin White that we saw or got in 2020? We're probably all using that like sick face emoji, the Dr. Yuck sign that we all got in grade school. Like you got on, don't anything under the cupboards, don't touch Dr. Yuck. I think that Devin White kind of had that Mr. Yuck sticker on him like all preseason because nope, he can't be good. He's not going to thrive. They brought in Jermaine Pratt and then all of a sudden he's going to be splitting time. Landon Roberts is wearing the dot. Well, all he did is go out in week 1, play 71 defensive snaps, every single snap for the Raiders. And he posted 11 tackles with 8 of them being solo. He had a tackle for a loss. He's rocking the green dot, something that we're always chasing. We want that because it's not indicative of production, but it's opportunity. And that's what we want. We want our players to have an opportunity to score points. And if they're not on the field, they can't score us points. White actually seems happy to be in Vegas. He's wanted there. The head coach, Pete Carroll, is just like a player's coach. He brings in all these players that are kind of like the island of misfit toys. Like they're cast-offs on their teams. Jamal Adams is even on the team now. So he's just kind of bringing in all these players. The linebackers coach there even called him a welcome addition and praised his versatility. Landon Roberts goes down in week 1 with an elbow injury. So a lot like Okereke, his situation became a lot clearer for his path to snaps. So I think he's a very secure role heading into week 2. The Raiders get the Chargers in week 2. And a week ago, we were thinking the Chargers are going to be a super run heavy team, but they came out in week 1 and like threw in a ton. So Chargers going to be throwing us a curveball and running the ball a lot in week 2, or are they going to be that passing team? I think regardless of what team shows up, they play such a high volume of snaps that White is just going to be fine. White's rostered in 22% of sleeper leagues at the chance, so there's a really good opportunity that is available. He's probably a hot waiver claim if you had stat chasers in your league. They were just looking at final stat totals, but the PFF metrics even look good. Like he was a lot of green for a player that we were kind of dissing to start the season. So, even if you don't believe in White long term, I think maybe you pick him up, package him in with a deal to, like someone's going to need a linebacker at some point. Maybe the guy who lost Micah McFadden, and suddenly you got an accepted trade offer in your notification. So I don't know. What are your thoughts there, Kyle, on Mr. White?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. You make a ton of great points. You look at, right, like you said, Devin White. Like, hey, this week was a lot of green in that PFF grades, a lot of red there before, so he was catching a lot of hate, and he had such success early for us IDP gamers, and we were excited. And the decline, left a sour taste in our mouth, and now he's back, and we're like, yuck, like you said, but. Like, yeah, he's the full-time guy there, right? And now Landon Roberts is hurt, so he was the third guy anyway in base and wasn't, but he's still like, okay, if there was a chance he was going to bleed into his snaps, well, he's not unavailable. Well, the Jermaine Pratt's there. He played 92% of the snap. It was up there, but they're putting him on the edge for some snaps as well. So they're kind of moving him around where White's the stable, the green dot linebacker, and I agree with you. Like, use it while you can, right? While he has that role, you can if you pick him off the wire, if he's your LB3 or LB4, you're going to get points out of him. If you can package him and move him, like, use it. I'd like to use these guys while I can, if you got them for cheap, pick them up for the price of mouse click, shout out Johnny the Greek. For sure. Like, this is what we look for, right? Opportunity. Guys are out there for snaps. Just get us tackles while we can, use them while we can. And then, we'll churn and burn if the situation changes. That's why you got to tune into the IDP show. Listen to Jeff, listen to Josh and Bobby and the boys.
Listen to Kyle.
If you're there. That's, use these guys while you can. And then if something changes, keep your ears open, pay attention to what everybody's talking about and pivot, but like right now, Devin White is startable for sure.
Kyle, you kind of bring up an interesting point, like as far as like turn and burn kind of mentality, like looking at like dynasty, like longevity for IDP. When you're playing in your IDP leagues, do you treat IDP assets and players more as like almost a redraft mentality where you're willing to move off of those type of players quicker just because, and not to sound like, like we can always find the next guy, but like there's always going to be the next guy, like on the offensive side, I don't know if we see that as often or as frequent, but like, it just seems like every year on the defensive side, we get, sucked in, there's a lot of stuff going on right now about, is it Antonio Winfield, or do you want to play maybe the guy that you're going to talk about next?
Yeah.
Who's the better play right there? So like, if you could have turned Antonio Winfield into this next player plus, 3 weeks ago, is that a smart move? Are you willing to move off of players like that, or what's your approach in your leagues?
Yeah, no, I definitely am. I'm willing to move IDPers. I mean, unless it's somebody you hold near and dear to you, right? You want to have fun as well and keep your guys, but I definitely am like I'm willing to move guys and just as long as you're paying attention to the trends and the snaps and how things are shifting and you're tuned in, you can find replacement and profit off of spike weeks or guys you think that might be on the decline. You catch it, stay ahead of the curve, right? You want to be proactive on if you see a situation might be in flux or changing, try to get ahead of it. Whether that be you going to get a guy who's looking like he might be getting a bigger role or a guy whose role's fading. Kind of want to get ahead of it. I'm more apt to hold my offensive guys for sure, and I'll move IDPs unless it's somebody maybe like Micah Parsons in a Packers jersey or Edgerrin Cooper, but yeah,
your fandom shows through. Right?
Yeah, sometimes, right?
Who's a player like defensively that's gonna die on your roster?
Eric Kendricks was one of them. I held on to him forever. I had a crush on him in his draft cycle, and I had him on a team. And he's not even on a team, but he's still on my team right now. But I said,
you just cut him last week. That's how bad it was.
I couldn't do it. I had the spot. I still have an extra spot. Like he's not my last spot yet. So, but right now, I'm trying to think of my top team. I have I would say I really like Jared Verse. So I think
Okay.
I'm a big Verse fan. I liked him at Florida State. I liked coming on. I like his spot. I'd be reluctant to move him right now.
I think he's a solid investment. You got the youth, you
Yeah.
got the upside. Everything's glowing for that guy.
Yeah.
All right. As we get into our defensive backs that we are a little higher on than most, we kind of teased out a little bit who this might be. But Kyle, who do you got as a defensive back that you're a little higher on this week than maybe consensus?
I don't know if we weren't sure if we're saying it right. Tykee Smith. We're gonna roll with that. Tykee Smith, Tampa Bay. I loved what I saw week one. He primarily played nickel last year. He transitioned to safety alongside Antoine Winfield this year. And he started the season with a bang right away. He led the Bucks in tackles with 11 and also had a pass defense. If the league should score those as well. Alignment wise, it was certainly ideal. 44 of his 74 snaps up in the box and slot areas per PFF. So we like him. We like our DBs up close near the action so they can make plays, right? We love it. I think this kid's a baller. He's got game. The usage is what we look for IDP purposes out of our defensive backs. And like Reddick, I like Smith to continue to roll on Monday night, as him and Antoine Winfield are like a fun duo on the back end there, and for us IDP gamers. So I was really excited to see him with this move to pair with Winfield. In week one, he didn't disappoint. So if you're wondering who is this guy, is it real? Like I think he's the real deal.
And the safeties in Tampa have historically been IDP gold too. Like there are certain positions in IDP where it doesn't really matter the player who is there. It's just, we're going to get that position just because it's been a stalwart for fantasy points. And again, next player up, Tykee Smith, Tykee Smith. Mr. Smith is there. He is the next guy. So yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So
love it.
My player is a little bit lower down the draft board, but still performed very well in week one. Dax Hill, Cincinnati Bengals. He played nearly every defensive snap for the Bengals in week one. He's locked in at the starting role. He played 74 of 76 snaps for the Bengals. Somehow the Browns had 76 offensive plays in this game. Not only did he play a high number of snaps, but he also played a high number of snaps where we love to see those snaps from our defensive backs in that IDP sweet spot. He played 55 of 76 snaps in either the defensive line, the box, or the slot corner. He actually played 34 of his snaps in the slot corner position. And that has kind of been like kind of the honey hole the last couple of years of those defensive back breakouts. You know, we saw a couple of years ago, Trent McDuffie, you know, and just kind of that trend kind of continues. Like this is kind of that new, with the way the offenses in the NFL are kind of evolving and rolling. This is kind of that spot. He's kind of like a third linebacker. He's near the line of scrimmage. He can make a lot of opportunities. And we saw that even against the Browns offense that really wasn't great or is great, or, you know, we'll see what the future holds, who or the 48 quarterbacks they decide to play he's going to be. But, you know, he's making plays. He piled up 9 tackles in week one. That was one behind for the team lead. Demetrius Knight Jr., he led the team with 10 tackles. So, you know, that's great to see from your defensive back. The Bengals take on the Jaguars this week. So a kind of a pass-heavy team. They got a lot of wide receiver options. They got rid of Tank Bigsby, so that identity of that team might be short passes out of the outside, runs to the outside, and that's right where Dax Hill is going to make his hay. So I have a lot of shares of Hill. I think he's got a great chance to repeat his week one performance. I have him smack dab in the middle of a DB2 territory, and I wouldn't be surprised to see his name back there at the back end of the DB1 spots this time next week. So
I dig it, dude. You'll never hear me say anything bad about a former Wolverine either. So, but no, yeah, like you said, man in the slot, playing there, and you know that Bengals offense didn't score a ton this week, but they're going to move the ball. They're going to put up points, and they're going to force teams to do the same if they want to hang. So he'll be busy, and the Jaguars should keep him busy. So
I hope so. For all my Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase stacks I've got going, that was not a fun week one. And then you throw AJ Brown into the mix, and a couple of those are like, oof. Happy
brother, I feel you. I feel that.
Yeah.
I did a couple spots where it was like the lowest scoring team in the league, and on paper, it looked pretty nice going in.
Yeah, I'm paper champion, right?
Paper champion, paper Tigers.
Yeah. So the 6 players that we like this week more than most, Haason Reddick, Isaiah McGuire, Bobby Okereke, Devin White, Tykee Smith, and of course, Dax Hill. Now we're going to flip the script here a little, Kyle. We're going to flip it to some players that we're kind of hesitant on heading into week 2 compared to the kind of the consensus. And who's the defensive lineman that you're like, hold up?
Yeah, so this one hurts a little bit because I really like the player. I do. And that's Laiatu Latu, defensive end for the Indianapolis Colts. I really like Latu. I think he's a really good player. But I'm a little hesitant this week. Week 1, Latu actually led the Indianapolis edge group rotation. He played 32 snaps, while Quiddy Pay played 30. Tyquan Lewis, 22, and Samson Ebicam logged 18. So he led the unit. You always like that anyway. But for the most part, it was a pretty quiet day for Latu, although an interception did save his output if you did roll him out. Let's just say we're not going to bank on that happening, right? Again, you know what I mean? It's far from a sticky.
We like repeatable stat, right?
Yes, yeah. It's tough for that to be a sticky stat, let alone for defensive backs, let alone defensive ends. So we're not counting on that. Pass rush wise, though, he had just 1 pressure and just a 60.7 pass rush grade. But I fully expect better days ahead. I really do. I think he's a super talented pass rusher, and I'm excited to see him in his second year. But however, week 2, Latu, he has a tough matchup against a stout Denver offensive line. It's one of the better units in the league. I think the Colts are likely to get some more defensive run this week after facing that abysmal Miami offense in week 1 that struggled to keep the ball at all. Although, while he might see some more volume, he's still in that, rotation, which he'll probably lead it again. But I think the matchup, it's just a tough task for him to get home for his first sack of the year. Denver's stout up front. And so I'm just a little hesitant this week.
Yeah,
I'm not chasing that interception. If you're like,
you're not chasing. Yeah, underdogs got the interception bet.
Yeah.
Smash
it. Yeah.
The Colts were an interesting play week 1. I know the Twitter streets were kind of, like Zaire Franklin was a ugly name, this week just because of the production, but they only played, I think it was like 37 snaps on defense against the Dolphins, and I don't think he even played all of the snaps. And he was like amazing. He had like 6 tackles in like 30 snaps or something like that. So
I think he logged like 80%, right? I think it was, and then they pulled everybody. Yeah,
because they were up by like 30 by the third quarter. It was they were both teams were kneeling down the whole fourth quarter.
Exactly. Yeah,
right. And especially with him coming off the ankle injury, I'm sure they were totally fine with that. So totally supportive of that one. This one is going to hurt a lot just because, especially if we had, if you heard the intro, we were both like praising the Packers and everything, but my defensive lineman to fade is going to be Micah Parsons. And it's obvious the reasons why. He's still got the back issue. He just was listed as questionable. He's probably more than likely going to play. We had the rumors of him needing an epidural shot to like kind of get through things, which is not unheard of, which players do all the time, but that's not something that I'm thinking Parsons or the Packers want to have as like a long-term solution to this like massive investment that they just stuck in. So they're probably going to play the long game. He played 30 of 67 snaps in week 1, well below his normal. Obviously, coming off the short week 2, playing on Thursday night, it's not going to do him any favors for that. I'm sure the Packers, like we just mentioned, are going to be playing a little snap management with him. That could limit his opportunity. We saw a sack last week, but like it legit came on like the last play on defense for the Packers. It was, just kind of one of those, like, you knew it was going to happen, but, outside of that one play, he didn't get any stats. Like he's literally getting double teamed. There's a couple like all 22 clips of him like getting like basically helmet ripped off with a double team and stuff like that. But if that's happening to him, Luke Van Ness is going to score well. Rashawn Gary scored well. Like you said, like it's just, Jake Colhagen always says like a rising tide raises all ships. Well, the Packers got a big tide when Parsons came to town. So I just think with the reduced snaps, the injury, I think that just caps his ceiling for this week. He might get a sack, but if you play in a tackle heavy league, I think you're just kind of chasing at that point, and you're kind of really becoming very big play dependent at that point. a very popular ranking site has Parsons listed as the DL7 this week, and I just think that's a recipe for disappointment for your team. I have him in a 16-team league where we start 2 defensive linemen, and I'm kind of considering other options. Maybe pivot to a Malcolm Kuntz or a Dorrance Armstrong, who also are coming off really strong performances. I am in no means saying that all season long that he's going to be in this part of the show, but maybe for week 2, I just want to play it safe and keep stacking wins and playing the for sures at this point.
No, dude. Look, I know it hurt you to say this, and I get it, man. I'm excited about him too. But no, you make a great point, right? He played 30 snaps the first week, less than 50% of the total snaps, right? I don't expect Green Bay is just going to ramp it up on a short week where he's still dealing with back issues. We also have, well, I say we, like, we're part of the Packers, right?
We are part. We could be owners. We could be owners.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we should get on that. They have an early bye week too, right? I'm pretty positive.
Week 5?
Week 5, yep. So, I don't expect them to just like all of a sudden ramp him up before that. Like, let's not, right? Let's make sure the back's right. We want him for the long game here. So, yeah, like I think it comes down to like tempered expectations, right? It's not like, he got a sack. He was out there. He's a DL1 instantly. He's gonna definitely play more snaps. Like, dude, he can impact the game with a smaller snap share. There's no doubt about it. But I think it just comes down to realistic, like temper expectations for how much he's going to be out there, and not just think he's going to be up to his normal workload that we're used to right away. Because I don't see a reason for him to ramp it up, especially when everybody else is playing well, right? So get him out there when you feel good about it, and it's certain. I'm sure they have certain packages are ready for, and obviously passing downs and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm not expecting a big ramp up in a workload either.
Yep.
So.
They're saving him for week 6 when they have Dallas. That's going to be that is going to be some great television that week. So
he might play fullback too. Just go.
Both ways. He's leather helmet.
Yeah.
So we got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sticking in the NFC North, going to go to a linebacker, Kyle. That you're kind of like pump the brakes here a little bit. Who do you got for your linebacker?
Ivan Pace Jr. from Minnesota. So Blake Cashman left this past week's game with a hamstring injury, and it sounds like he could be out multiple weeks from what I heard. Those things can linger. Cashman is a typical full-time linebacker in Minnesota, the green dot guy. Ivan Pace, he is the LB2 there, but it's a volatile snap share, right? It's not a full-time role. I just want to start off. I love Ivan Pace, but this is another one that pains me. However, with Cashman out, I still have some pause with just thinking they're going to turn right to Pace, and you should just put him in, because after Cashman left the game, it was actually Eric Wilson, former Packer, last year, not Pace, who took over the lead duties after Cashman left, right? They didn't just hand the dot to Pace to run the show. They went right to Eric Wilson, a veteran who's been around the league. He's just a rock solid dude. It was him as the only full-time linebacker. Pace ended up with just a 70% snap share on the day, and I think he came off for most, if not all, of the third down work, right? He wasn't out there. Yep. It was just early down work, even after Cashman left. Given what we saw in week 1 after Cashman exited the game, they didn't just hand the lead role to Pace. They went to Wilson. I'm not confident Pace just all of a sudden sees a bump in work, and he could still have this unreliable LB2, the Minnesota LB2 workload, this volatile, unreliable role for us IDP gamers to trust. And I want Ivan Pace to be a thing. He's a fun player. He's explosive. He makes splash plays behind the line, dude. He's just fun to watch. He's a good player. I want him to be a thing. Hell, I think we all do, right? Yep. But Wilson sliding into that green dot role when Cashman went out, I just don't think it's a great sign. And it's a case where I would want to see it before I straight up trust it, just thinking it's going to happen, right?
And thinking about like these defensive coaches and the defensive coordinators, Brian Flores obviously knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And maybe rather than having 2 players playing out of position, like you bump Pace into a different role and then you dump Wilson into a different role, let's just like have one player playing a position that, Wilson obviously playing the starting role, let Pace do what he's done. He's been efficient, effective. Mm-hmm. Like you said, selfishly, we want more of Pace. I think his story is just amazing. He's like the modern day Rudy, like,
Yeah.
didn't get drafted, but it's just, I think maybe that has something to do with it. So I sadly like this call too. Like, it's one of those,
I know.
I hate when you're right, Kyle.
Yeah. Right. And I hope I'm wrong, right? I hope,
Yeah, right?
Yeah, you can throw tomatoes at me if I'm wrong, and he goes out there and plays every snap for sure.
Yep.
But I'm just hesitant. Like, I don't know that it's just like this transition to Pace. All of a sudden, hey, it's full time. Like,
Do you still have Pace as like a LB3-4, and do you like maybe put Wilson kind of in that LB2 territory if he does have that Cashman role?
I think Cashman. Wilson's like a solid vet. He'll get you some. Cashman's got a little more to him as far as he's got more range. He's a better blitzer. I think Wilson's more of that LB3, LB4. I think they're both I think Pace and Wilson are both like LB4, LB3-4. It's just like, do you want the steady Eddie 6 to 8 tackles that Wilson will give you? Where Pace, he can be way more productive on a limited snap share than most guys because he's so explosive. He's got the twitch. He can get sacks. Yeah, tackles for loss, but
he can have that week winning upside.
Sure.
Like if you're, and maybe that's like the route to take if you have a situation where you have both of them. Like, think about your matchup. If you're needing a home run, you're going up against a juggernaut in your league. Play Pace because he's going to have that league winning or week winning upside. Whereas what, I just need 8-10 points from my linebacker, 2-3. Roll out Wilson.
So. Right. Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. A linebacker I'm not too keen on this season or this week, and he kind of proved that in week 1, was Terrel Bernard. So Bernard played 100% of snaps. Sounds great. But the production just didn't match the volume. He wears the green dot. That's great. He's playing the defense. He's on the field, but he logged just 4 tackles. No splash plays, no sacks, no tackle for losses, not even like a turnover. And so for me, and maybe other fantasy managers too, that's kind of like a red flag, like in any type of scoring format, whether you're playing tackle heavy or big play, big 3 scoring. So his low tackle output could be one of 2 things. It could be like the game script, the Baltimore Ravens running lots of plays on the perimeter, keeping it away from him, running deep passes. We saw a lot of that. Or maybe it was an internal Buffalo scheme shift where they're just kind of reducing his opportunity to have high impact plays. We saw that the Bills with defensive coordinator Bobby Bacci used a lot of 3 linebackers at 25% of the time. We saw Dorian Williams out there a lot more, and that's just kind of siphoning opportunity away from him. Nothing like 25% is not a lot, but that's still stealing opportunities. If that takes away 1 or 2 tackles, that just lowers his ceiling from week to week. Buffalo takes on the Jets this week, and I know the Jets are not the Ravens, but they both have running quarterbacks. They both rely heavily on their run game. They got a decent stable of running backs. They've got some elite wide receivers. So there's a lot of parallels between them. And the Ravens and the Jets played very similar number of snaps. They played the same number of run to pass in week 1. So we could see a rinse and repeat here where Bernard just isn't the LB1 that he might be as drafted as or is kind of seen as, but he's probably more like that, an LB3 this week. And so if you're rolling him out there and expecting that, like maybe temper expectations a little bit. And if you play in a shallow league where you maybe only start 2 linebackers, maybe it's a great week to pivot to a player with a better matchup or just someone who's got a consistent tackle volume. So, I'm not a Buffalo Bills hater. It's just the recent opportunity and the scheme change possibly is kind of giving me pause for Terrel Bernard.
You make some great points, man. I get it. And like you said, the week 1 matchup against Baltimore, you thought, it's a good spot for him and have a nice game. And it just didn't happen. And that happens sometimes, but also, right, it gives you a little pause. And you likely spent up to get Bernard in most spots. So, you got to play, you got to look at what you have, what you roll out. And, But yeah, I agree with you. Like, hey, temper some expectations because it didn't look great week 1 in the box score for you. And it looked like it should have been a good spot for him. And that happens. And maybe there's better days ahead, but yeah, I definitely get having pause after that.
And I think that's a great point too, Kyle. It's not like we're like, don't start these players or like cut them or get rid of them. It's just kind of like, where are you with your comfort level? Like, if you're expecting X and you get Y, come Monday, Tuesday, like, oh, that makes sense now, so I think we kind of have to learn from week to week of like what's going on, because this game changes really quick and it evolves from, not just from season to season, but literally week to week, so just kind of have to stay on those kind of things, and like following you and following, Mike Woolard, following John Macri, all these guys. I mean, these guys know what they're talking about. They put in a lot of time and effort into their ranks, their all of that kind of stuff. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. So maybe a little more smoke this week for Bernard.
Yeah. Let's hope, man, for sure.
So a player that does not have a lot of smoke, we were all kind of hyping this guy up. This guy was burning hot about a month and a half ago, but maybe he burned out too soon. Who's that defensive back that you're fading, Kyle?
Yeah, it's Jaden Hicks of the Chiefs. Popular breakout. I think, he had a lot of fans out there, coming out of college. He had the profile. Yeah, me too. He had the profile we look for, big athletic dude who likes to hit. He could play everywhere. He was versatile, and he just looked like a dude that was built for IDP. And, we were hoping after, the first season is a rookie. It was a typical rookie season. Let's just call it, right? Can't expect everything right away. But then Justin Reed leaves, and it looks like this natural transition for Jaden Hicks to come into that role. And we're like, hell yeah, let's go, right? Well, the preseason, it kind of had our alarm bells, up, because it gave us some pause. It looked like he was the third wheel behind Brian Cook and Shamari Connor. We thought he'd have a role. We just didn't know how big it was going to be when week one got here, right? All three of them were going to be out there, but what kind of volume was Hicks going to get? And in week one, Hicks played just 60% of the Chiefs defensive snaps, 39 total, while Cook played all 65. Connor played 64. Well, Hicks, he saw most of his work up close in the box slot area. We love it. Love that, but there are just too many safety options out there playing a full-time snap share to rely on somebody being less than, to be rock solid for every week at the position, right? There's just too many options at defensive back. So you don't want to just bank on somebody with a less than ideal workload, just because they are, kind of playing in the box slot area, right? But he's not out there all the time. As for the other guys mentioned, Brian Cook played full time, but he spends the majority of his time patrolling deep. So we're just throwing out there. We're not looking at him either. We're talking about Hicks. We're not looking at. It's not like we're looking at Cook either. It's not ideal for me with these Chiefs safeties, defense backs, whatever you want. It's basically Shamari Connor from this group, and that's it out of the three right now. Connor spent 50 of his 64 snaps up in the box slot and had 10 tackles and a forced fumble. It looks like they're leaning on him and Cook more as far as, being the full-time guys being out there. Connor moves around. He was more of a slot guy this year. He's seen a little bit of work at safety and a lot of time up in the box slot area. And Hicks just isn't getting a full-time role. It's not ideal. And I just don't think we can trust Hicks until further notice and we see something change.
I think the big point here, Kyle, is there's way too many other options that are getting ideal alignment, that are getting all the snaps, and at a position that's super deep, excuse me, you can't trust a 75-80% player at this point. So
yep, you're right. That's the bottom line. Is there's too many options, and unfortunately he's not out there enough right now.
One player that is out there enough, but not trusting him heading into week 2, New England Patriots defensive back Jaylinn Hawkins. He was a box score stud in week 1. And so if you have league mates that are just checking the box score and they add players based on week 1 performance, he was the DB1 or whatever, DB2 this week, actually in Big 3 scoring, he scored 25 points. I'm going to pick him up. We kind of peel back those numbers a little bit. There's a really strong chance that he doesn't repeat his week 1 numbers again. First of all, Hawkins is lining up way too off the ball, more than we like. And when we see that, we see a lot of volatility in scoring and production. He played 63 snaps last week, which is awesome, but 44 of them came at deep safety, which is not awesome. Yeah. And sure, the box score looked great. Like I had mentioned, 25 points, Big 3 scoring. He finished as the DB2 overall last week, behind the Bears defensive back that picked off McCarthy and ran in for a touchdown. Right.
Yep.
Yep. Perfect. And so, again, big splash plays. But the problem with big splash plays, just like Laiatu Latu, you can't bank on him week to week. Of his points Jaylinn Hawkins scored, he had an interception and a sack. I don't think that a lot of deep safeties who play almost 60% of their snaps at deep alignment are going to come up with a sack and a pick in a lot of games. In his entire 6-year career, he has only had 6 double-digit scoring games, including last week. So, he's been playing football a while, and for him to this is only his 6th double-digit game in his career. Like, there's a really good chance there's some regression here. This is probably an outlier, not a trend. So I would love for Hawkins to keep continuing to break out. I love stories like this. Like, these are one of those guys, like him and Craig Woodson were like right before the preseason. Like, these were guys to stash, especially with all like the, the Jabril Peppers news going on, with all the Kyle Duggar stuff going on. These are the fun kind of players that make IDP fun, that you can like sneak on your roster before the season starts and be like, you look like a genius because like, oh, everyone's running the roster to pick these guys up, and like, they're already rostered, fellas. Sorry, So these are the type of players that like are fun to roster, and because you have that. And week 2 comes around, you can drop them and add another guy that's a little more relevant for you. So, So for me, guys lining up as deep as he is, great story for week 1, but I just don't see a lot of opportunity for him to repeat in week 2.
Yeah, that's good call, man. I'm with you. I actually, Craig Woodson actually had a little bit of better alignment than Hawkins, and I went after him in a couple spots rather than Hawkins because I figured everybody would be looking at that beautiful box score expecting big things again. But yeah, no, man, I totally dig this call.
That's why I don't like playing in leagues with you, because you guys, we got that one league with you and everybody, and it's just like, when you show up at the poker table and you don't know who the sucker is, and then like you're the sucker, like, yep. I just showed up at the poker table, boys.
Oh shit, my chips are gone.
Here's my entry fee. Thanks for letting me play. So
yep.
All right. So kind of recapping our players that were kind of fading this week, heading into week 2, we're gonna fade Laiatu Latu, Micah Parsons, Ivan Pace Jr., Terrel Bernard, Jaden Hicks, and Jaylinn Hawkins. And to wrap the show up, Kyle, we're gonna go with some players that just kind of have us scratching our heads at this point. Like, we don't know, preseason news kind of led us thinking one thing. Week 1 totally have us thinking another. Last week we looked at players like Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd a month ago was like locked in, ready to go. And just before the season started, we got this news like, oh, Ventrell Miller might be there at the linebacker. They used that word or, and that kind of gave us a little bit of like hesitation. Like, what do we do with him? He was on the show last week as a player. Like, maybe we kind of pumped the brakes a little bit. And last week, it was one of the nails. Like, Devin Lloyd and Ventrell Miller aren't even like startable at this point. Maybe not even rosterable. And so, who's a player right now that you're just got like, oof, scratching that big beautiful head of yours?
It's like a whole situation in general, and it's the Dallas linebackers. Like, what the hell?
The whole Dallas team.
Yeah, the whole team. It's the Dallas linebackers. Just because, like, after training camp in the preseason, we were led to believe it was going to be Jack Sanborn down in Green Dot. I know Kenneth Murray wasn't around with stuff going on, but we thought it was going to be Jack Sanborn. He's finally going to get a shot. He knew that he has familiarity with Eberflus. We wanted to see it. Week 1 Week 1 gets here, and it's freaking Kenneth Murray in the lead role as the only full-time Dallas linebacker. Of course, right? Murray played all 63 defensive snaps. Sanborn played 48, a 76% snap share. Damone Clark, 67%. Maris Lufau logged just 6 snaps. So it was Kenneth Murray as the lone full-time linebacker. It's just frustrating, right? Because we thought one thing, got led to another. We wanted Sanborn to get this job, not Murray. I think there's a lot of people out there that wanted that, right, in IDP land. And I just don't like any of it. I don't like it. Not happy about it. To no surprise, Kenneth Murray struggled. It's just he struggled, and I'm not surprised about it. We've seen it before. And quite frankly, all the Dallas linebackers struggled in that first game. There was nobody that stood out, right? So I guess for now, Murray's kind of the only one you can trust because he's the only one playing full-time snaps. And if he's out there full-time, he's going to fall in the tackles, just being out there, right? Opportunity, reactive. a reactive game from him. But we know what he is at this point, right? He's struggled week one. It's a trend with him. And it could be just a matter of time until there's a shift if he does continue to struggle. So I'm still holding out hope for Sanborn if I do have bench space, and you can stomach him on your bench, you don't need it for something else. Still holding out some hope there, and I think Murray, it's a matter of time. But and I'm also just kind of keeping an eye on the news around DeMarvion Overshown and his recovery timeline too as things progress there. I like Overshown. The knee injuries are brutal. Those are tough. It's tough to come back from, but I guess this whole situation just has me scratching my head. When you said a situation that scratches as you go, and I don't know, scratches my head, like what the hell, man? Like we wanted one thing, we wanted one thing, and we got Kenneth Murray. Like, not happy about it. Bottom line, I'm just not happy about it, and I know I'm not alone.
No, you're definitely not. There's a lot of stumped IDP analysts. There's a lot of stumped fantasy managers that are just like, it just makes too much sense. And why is it this way? So maybe he's got naked pictures of Jerry Jones. Who knows what's going on?
And that's why they traded for him, because that made me scratch my head as well. Like, why did they trade? Right. It was a late round pick, but still, like, I just didn't get it. But
there's a reason they call it the Big D.
Yeah.
Right?
I got you. Yeah, I feel you. I see what you're stepping in. All right.
I hope you're not feeling that. That's
well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. One player that I am scratching my head at is, sorry, Bobby, Quentin Lake. Dude's a baller. He carried many of my teams last season, but what happened in week one? 63 snaps, only 2 tackles, despite playing all but 4 snaps in that IDP sweet spot. So we had 59 snaps. Like, I think I could trip into 2 tackles if I played 59 snaps along line of scrimmage. I just don't get like how you couldn't like fall into a pile, get an assisted tackle or something a little more than that. Not only that, but the PFF scores for him were brutal. Like lots of reds, lots of oranges. Great for a fall drive in the countryside, but probably not for my defensive back. On a team with not a lot of linebacker talent, I was kind of expecting a big week from him because he could kind of be like that pseudo LB2 on the team, even though he's not listed as a linebacker. But he kind of let me down a lot. The Rams get the Titans this week. They could only muster 57 snaps last week on offense. I know there's some growing pains there with Cam Ward and stuff like that, but I'm just having a hard time trusting Lake this week in my starting lineups. Like you said before, better days are probably ahead for sure. But right now, Lake just has me scratching my head. Like, I don't know if I can start him in a 2 defensive back league, maybe a 3 or 4 defensive back league, just because like the history is there. But man, 2 tackles on 63 snaps, that is not a good look. Not a good look, my friend. So
no, man, I'm with you. I had Quentin Lake, picked him up in a lot of rosters last year. He was super productive, and it was a tough first week. Yeah, and like you said, it's the alignment was what we looked for, and he had a nice volley. Like you said, 60 some snaps, and it just wasn't there. So yeah, it's a head scratcher for sure.
Do you trust the process, Kyle, when it comes to players like Lake, like where he has the history, he's got the alignment, it was just one of those one-offs, and like roll him out there in week 2 and just kind of, be ready to be hurt again? Or
for sure. No, I will. You're right. There's an amount of time, whether you're going to do it for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or maybe it's 2 weeks for it. But no, I will. Right. I'm going to trust the process until the process keeps giving me bad results. Until I'm done tolerating it. Right.
Week 9 rolls around. Come on, Lake, you can do this.
And you just double and triple and quadruple and down on everything. But I will for. Yeah, chasing bad bets, all year.
Nope. All right. So, Kyle, that kind of brings us towards kind of the end of the show. This is your chance to share any thoughts on like the start of the season, maybe some like insight into like roster management, IDP, just overall in general, just maybe some knowledge to pass along to our listeners of the IDP.
I guess I would say, we talked about, Zaire Franklin, right? The slow start, he got pulled early because the Colts were beating up on the Dolphins. We know Zaire Franklin's a tackle machine. He's had 160 plus tackles 3 straight years. It's a slow start. Players like that, like it happens sometimes, right? Little patience. These top-notch guys like that, don't just drop them for guys that aren't of their caliber, right? Have a little patience, and some slow first weeks can happen. If I'm talking the bigger names. And like you said with Hawkins, don't chase every box score. I mean, sometimes you got to make a move, right? But just you make sure you're tuned into the IDP show and listening to you and Mike and Adam and Josh and Bobby and John, obviously Macri and Johnny the Greek. Listen to everybody and what everybody's talking about, but yeah, don't jump the gun on the big names that you spent draft capital on if they had a slow week 1 or 2. Like, a little patience there. That's, I guess.
I think this creates a great buy low window, on some players. Like, you get a nervous manager who maybe is not tuned in, like really who's, we all have these types of managers in our leagues. They're the box scorer guys. They only look at the final thing. They don't look at like maybe why he only had 6 tackles in the game or why he had 25 points in the game. Like, they're just like, 25 points, click, he's on my roster. And then, they roll him out there and then he's got 3 points the next week. And they're like, what happened? For the price of a cup of coffee, you too could have the great.
Yep. So. Yeah, but for sure, man. It's just like, it's early season. We've seen it before. Guys can have tough weeks. If it continues, then, the flag starts looking a little more red. But yeah, it like, you just got to make sure, like, because I think you brought up Zaire Franklin earlier. It was a great case where he got pulled early. Got to make sure you're looking at that type of thing, baking that into the reason why he didn't quite have the week of it when you're looking at the studs like that. So,
how long into the season do you feel pretty confident that like where a player's trending? Like, obviously 1 week's not enough. How big of a sample size do you like to see, Kyle?
I would say, 3 to 4 weeks. If it's a guy that is kind of caught your eye emerging, jumped on your radar, say, and you're like, okay, is this real? And then after I see it for 3 weeks, I'm just like, okay, it's pretty stable. You always keeping an eye on it, but yeah, I usually like to see 3 to 4 weeks. But
and the other thing you have to kind of consider too is a lot of times, week 1 is the first time all of the starters are really out there together. Some of these teams use nobody in preseason. Some of the teams use some of their players in preseason. And then other teams kind of use everybody. It's just kind of like a just team by team dynamic, that works for some teams. That's their culture, And so week 1 really is the first time we really get this full litmus test of like, this is what we have, and
great point.
New teams, new faces on teams. There's going to take some time to kind of grow and gel and mold together. And so, this is kind of like preseason week 1 in a way, so, like you said, I think week 3, week 4, we kind of know what we got, but then we got bye weeks and injuries to deal with. So
we might as well make it tougher once we thought we were figuring things out a little bit. Let's just throw some wrenches into it and make it tougher on us. Right.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So Kyle, before we sign off on this one, what are you working on right now? And where can the fantastic audience find more of your work, or maybe even the link to that OnlyFans page?
You got to pay for that, but
that's a paywall.
That's paywall.
My work's free, but my pictures aren't. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got the T-shirt somewhere. You can find all my work over at footballguys.com. I do the weekly IDP waiver wire report. It's a tool on the website, not an article form, but it's a tool on the website where you can see everybody that's up, a little blurb on them. And me and Aaron Rudnicki both tandem that. He does upgrades, downgrades into the waiver wire, so it's a pretty cool tool there. And my first set of IDP rest of season projections went up this week, and so I'll be tinkering with those until the season's over, I'm sure, every day.
Definitely a labor of love, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
more love than
yeah, I hope so.
Well, perfect. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the IDP After Show. I once again want to thank Kyle for coming on. Just one of the greatest dudes out there. Just love hanging with you, love talking ball with you. It just feels right every time you're on the show, buddy. So thank you. I appreciate that. Coming on, sharing some fantastic knowledge about the game we all love. Be sure to follow him. Catch all of the great work that he's doing over at Footballguys. Speaking of following, if you're not doing so already, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you're always in the know about what's going on about anything and everything IDP. Be sure to join me next week as Jason King, writer over there at DLF, joins me as we talk a little ball about week 3. For Kyle and myself, we say thank you for joining us and best of luck to you and your teams in week 2. Until next time, take care.
This was the IDP After Show.